When it comes to early home video consoles, most people are familiar with the Atari 2600, and there are more than a few of us that are old enough to remember our first Pong console. But between the launches of these two pioneering gadgets, Atari created a few other interesting consoles that very few people remember today. Hello and welcome to Operation 8-Bit. I'm your host, Tony Landy, and over there behind the camera, we have Sparky making sarcastic comments. For those of you who are new to our channel, keep an eye out for those. They pop up from time to time during the video, and they look something like this. Also, make sure to stick around to the end of the video to catch some of the bloopers and outtakes from this episode. And there are a lot of them in this episode. Okay, let's jump into today's topic. Atari first released the arcade version of Pong in November of 1972, launching Atari and the coin-op video game industry in a really big way. Pong was modeled upon the earlier, more primitive game Video Ping Pong that was released on the Magnavox Odyssey, the first home video game console. With the modest success of the Odyssey and the breakthrough success of arcade Pong, in 1975, Atari released a home version of the game that was sold through Sears. Home Pong was a huge hit that holiday season, selling around 150,000 units. This, of course, led to dozens of Pong-type clones hitting the market. That competition kept Atari on its toes, and the company continually tried to outdo itself by releasing upgraded versions of the game based on the same concept. Atari also started creating entirely new home consoles based on their other arcade titles. Before we look at those, why don't we start by taking a closer look at the system that started it all. Atari's first home console was originally licensed under the Sears Telegame logo, and a year later it was re-released under the Atari brand. As the name implies, the console could only play one game, Pong. Controls consisted of these two knobs that operated panels on the screen, and like the arcade version, this one is two-player only. Unlike the Magnavox Odyssey, Atari Pong could actually keep score on screen. As I mentioned earlier, the success of this console led to a number of clones. We recently took a trip to the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas, and got this footage of their first-gen consoles that they have on display. The museum also has this supersized version of Pong that you can just walk up to and play. We've actually got a full episode plan that covers our trip to the museum, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that one when it comes out. In 1976, Atari followed up Pong with Super Pong, which included 4 game variations. Catch, a sort of inverse Pong. Solitaire, a one-player game where you can play with yourself. Super Pong, where each player controlled 2 paddles. And of course, regular old Pong. Over the next year or so, Atari continued to release more Pong consoles such as Super Pong 10, Super Pong Pro-Am, Super Pong Pro-Am 10, and then Ultra Pong. All these were basically variations on the original gameplay, and Atari quickly began to realize that they needed to come up with some new ideas to remain competitive. This led to Atari Video Pinball. Video Pinball started out as an arcade game, then in 1977 it made its way into homes as a dedicated console. In addition to the pinball games, this console also includes a basketball-like game and 2 variations of the highly popular arcade game Breakout. My console is a first-generation Sears Telegames branded version, which is nearly identical to its Atari branded counterpart. Let's change the camera angle so we can get a better look at this. The first thing you'll notice is this cool 1970s wood grain pattern and that lovely brown colored case that makes it the perfect complement to the home decor of the period. This thing would fit right in with an orange shag carpet and a harvest gold couch in any contemporary living room of the time. There was also a second release of this console that had a grayish white case that was a little more visually appealing. On the left hand side we have a menu that shows the different games along with buttons for power, selecting games, and serving up the ball. On the right hand side we have a Pong style knob for playing Breakout, and here on the sides we have flipper switches for playing pinball. On the back there's a battery compartment, and this takes 6 C-cell batteries. My unit also came with the optional battery eliminator that works in earlier Pong consoles as well. Why don't we plug this in and get a look at some of the games. Around the height of Evel Knievel mania, Atari released an arcade game called Stunt Cycle, where the player controlled a guy on a motorcycle attempting to jump over an increasing number of buses. The following year, Atari released a home version that included 3 other games: Motocross, Enduro, and Drag Race, in addition to the port of the original arcade game. Again, I have the Telegames variation of the console, which is called Motocross Sports Center 4, which has some significant differences from its Atari-branded counterpart. Although the console doesn't have a wood grain finish, it does have this crappy brown accent panel that offsets the switches to select games and set difficulty. It also features this set of hand grips that you use to control the character as he jumps over buses or avoids obstacles. You play by rotating the right hand grip like the accelerator on a motorcycle. The more you twist, the more power you give to the bike. Too little power and you won't make the jump. And if you give it too much power, you'll pop a wheelie, flip over, and die. The Telegames version includes the same games as Atari Stunt Cycle, but it also has 16 Pong-style games that are pretty much the same variants from previously released consoles. The Pong games are played with these 4 detachable controllers that plug into the side of the unit here. Almost from the beginning, Nolan Bushnell of Atari recognized the limitation of games that relied on custom logic burnt onto a circuit board. The design pattern only allowed for one game and its variants, meaning that each new system would require a completely different console. Development of a new console cost a lot of money and took time to complete. Then, once it was released, it only had about a 3-month shelf life before coming outdated. This was a very risky business model. Atari's first attempt at a cartridge-based system was this console, the Atari 401. It was released to a very limited number of test markets in New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Sandusky, Ohio in the fall of 1976. The case features that lovely 1970s wood grain styling offset against a poop brown injected molded plastic case. On the front we have a set of switches for power, game selection, and system reset. Here along the top we have the cartridge port. There were only 6 games released, most of which were based on earlier dedicated consoles and arcade titles that Atari had already developed. I only have 4 of these: Tank Battle, Breakout, Night Driver, and Super Ultra Awesome Pong Pro Am 10 for doubles. The other two games were Space War and Bowling. Unlike the other dedicated consoles that we've already looked at, the 401 doesn't have a battery compartment. It does strictly rely on the battery eliminator. Atari didn't invest heavily in quality control, and because of that, many of the 401s were defective. One specific issue is that there's no shielding on the internal components, and because of this, the unit generates an EM surge when powering up, which can actually make the lights in a room flicker when you turn it on. The system also doesn't use any sort of heat sinks, so they have a tendency to overheat. There were a number of unconfirmed rumors that a few of the earlier models got so hot that the plastic case would actually warp. Needless to say, the 401 was a complete failure. Atari quickly pulled them off the shelves and had them shipped to an undisclosed landfill where they were buried. Okay, Sparky, what do you say we get this thing connected and play a game? First generation consoles like these from Atari were, and still are, a lot of fun to play. But Atari wasn't the only company to produce dedicated consoles at the time. Other companies like Coleco as well as Nintendo had their own lines of systems that came out around that same time. If you'd like us to do an episode on those, click the thumbs up button and leave us a comment below. Also, we do have a lot more videos on the way, so make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you won't miss those when they come out. As a reminder, all of the profits from any ad revenue that we make on this YouTube channel go to support charitable organizations like the Armed Services YMCA, who in turn use those funds to support our junior enlisted military members and their families. For a complete list of the charities that we support and how you can help, please visit our website. I've left the link to that in the description below. Again, we hope you enjoyed that video, and we'll see you next time on Operation 8-Bit.
A bit too enthusiastic about that. Yeah, I saw that.
You saw that, huh? It's the 1970s. This was a thing. All the people were sitting around trying to get in touch with themselves. You know? How the fuck should I know? We got that in a take.
I'm willing to count that as good.
You count that as good?
I'm counting that as good.
As long as we don't go downstairs and I go, ah shit, the audio's screwed up again.